taking us way back when to the 1950s. Meghan with her mixing bowl and flowers, Kate skipping through cornfields, this sort of fecund mother, you know, making a recovery just to be loving and loved, and maybe a little bit of light work. And actually, I don't think that is representative of the standard woman who gets cancer, who's a mother and who's also having to bushfight on other fronts. And I think I wanted something that spoke to modern women today, and neither of our Meghan or Kate
did you want a shot of her in hospital getting the tablet, the chemotherapy tablet?
No, but it was very old-fashioned. It
wasn't old-fashioned. It wasn't old-fashioned because the Queen would never have done it. It was very modern, and she showed a modern family. I don't know what you mean about the journey. She's gone through it. She's clearly had the most horrendous time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she wants to show some hope. And I think that's what the country wants. They want to see that the royal family offers hope again, is back in business, so to speak. It isn't terminal, as it appeared 6 months ago.
Well, yeah, I agree. And let's mention the second part of this, which is literally 90 minutes. I was 100 minutes. It was 100 minutes later. Netflix drop a promo for the new Archewell Productions documentary series about polo. And up it came on everyone's social media. And look, there's three things you could say about this in terms of what was behind this. One, it was a complete and utter coincidence that 100 minutes after this major revelation and announcement and film from Kensington Palace, by pure chance, Netflix, Meghan and Harry decide that is the moment to promote a series that doesn't air until December. The chances of that, I would say, are No Hope and Bob Hope. And Bob Hope has been dead for many years. Secondly, they did it to draw attention away from their rival palace, from the sibling that Harry hates and doesn't talk to, from the sister-in-law that Meghan hates and doesn't talk to, and vice versa. Or that thirdly, they wanted to, and this is probably my preferred theory, they wanted to capitalise on all the publicity around the Kate announcement by saying, boom, by the way, don't forget about us. Now, interestingly, Paula, you might recoil in horror because you never like to be brought too closely to reality with these two.
Wow.
About just how cynical they can be. But interestingly, it completely bombed. The next day's papers barely mentioned at all this polo series, nor did any other publications I saw around the world. It was all front page on Kate and William, Kate and William. Why do they do this kind of thing?
Well,
and the moment Netflix did it, even if it was an accident, why wouldn't the first thing you would do is ring them and say, please take that down, that's just going to backfire?
Well, I'm going to suggest that you're incredibly cynical when it comes to Harry and Meghan.
Very, very
and
cynical.
anything they do.
Yes,
and
with good reason.
And I'm also going to suggest that your grasp on reality, because of your cynicism, means that it's waning. Let's be honest, Piers, because the fact is, you know that when you come to market a show, it is done months in advance. This is not about Harry and Meghan.
Do you think it was pure coincidence?
This is not about... No, I don't think it was coincidence. I think the date...
Deliberate?
No. I think the date had always been set for when Netflix were going to first...
Really?
Of course.
You want to take a bet on that?
And I can give you an example.
You want to bet on that?
No, I don't, because I don't know...
No, you don't?
No, but can I give you an example?
Even a pound?
Can I give you an example?
Don't.
Can I give you an example?
Because you know it's nonsense.
Work with me with my example. Bear with me. Control the cynicism. I am going to be in a show. That show does not come out until October. It was advertised from April of this year.
Yeah. That's not my point.
Yes, it is.
Let me bring in Tom for a reality check
Yes, it is, because
Tom, you and I have been around the media block a little longer than young Paula. Hope you don't mind me calling you that. I'm sure you love it.
I'm very happy.
Everything's relative.
Tom, is there any world in which this just happened by chance?
Not. They were someone heard about it. He said, because the only raison d'etre of the Sussexes is to capitalise on their royal connections.
Right.
And the royal connections have got to be to associate themselves with the British royal family.
But what does it say about them that they would be happy for this promotion to go out within 2 hours of such a personal film about cancer from Kate?
They are just remorseless, selfish, false, ghastly couple who only believe in promoting themselves because that, in the end, is their only source of money. And what is very interesting in all this, which has never got commented on, that when Harry came back to England for Robert Fellowes' his uncle's funeral 2 weeks ago. He didn't go up to see his father.
No, stay with Earl Spencer.
But he could have gone up to Scotland. I
Yeah.
mean, the man who dashed over when it was all announced, he forgot about his dad. And so the whole thing is always
And also, he
contrived.
managed to come and go without any threat to his
Let me just
life.
finish. No threat to his
in relation
life.
to this ongoing
Everything
security
about
nonsense.
the Sussexes is so contrived, so self-interested, so
Tom-
unbelievably appalling
Yeah.
that one can only imagine that they really wish Kate and William ill.
Yes.
That's the royal
What's
my
family.
quite
goodness me. I think
extraordinary
that's
is
very
that you've
unfair.
just levelled the accusation of Harry and Meghan as being contrived in the same breath as you admit Kate can basically do what she likes, and yes, you said it was schmaltzy, etc., i.e. highly contrived.
Here's the difference.
So in other
Why-
words,
Hang on.
Kate can
Hang
be
on.
as contrived
Tessa,
as she
why-
likes,
why is
but Harry and Meghan
Tessa,
can't.
Tessa, here's
Yes.
the difference.
What's the
Kate's
difference?
film is about her cancer.
Her
She's
truth. Her truth.
No.
No, but it is her truth,
No,
isn't
no.
it? It's her
It's not
version
about her
of her
truth.
cancer.
She has cancer.
Yes,
She's not inventing
yes.
it.
No, I'm not
right?
suggesting
When
she
people
is.
talk about my truth, it normally means it's not the truth.
No, but
right?
it's-
There is the truth. It's not her truth.
It's part of the story.
No, it's not. It's a fact she has cancer, okay?
But we don't know what cancer.
And it's a fact
So
she's
what?
had chemotherapy. Okay. We know a lot more about what's happened to her than we normally do about royal health issues. But here's the difference. She's making no money out of this.
Oh,
She makes...
Piers.
Well, hang on, let me finish my point. This is a very personal thing about her health because she's the future queen and we've been demanding to know. Meghan and Harry's video, or their promo for their documentary, is a pure money-making exercise, trading off their royal titles to fill their coffers with more ill-gotten cash. That's why Tom and I are so cynical about it, because we see right through it.
Now, I don't know how you get on with basic arithmetic, but since the late Queen acceded to the throne, followed by Charles, the value of the Duchy of Lancaster and the Duchy of Cornwall put together, and William now, of course, is a Duke over the Duchy of Cornwall, has increased in value 16-fold. 1.6 billion pounds worth of profit.
So what?
Exempt of capital gains, exempt of corporation,
what?
which, by the way, would cover holus bolus the
don't
entire
say
winter
nonsense.
fuel
That's
duty.
absolutely
It's
nonsense.
not nonsense.
It is.
Tom,
The
it is
Duchy of
100.
Cornwall
What's your
Don't say
point?
nonsense.
What's your point?
£22
My
million.
point is, Kate does not have to worry about money.
Well, but-
and in fact,
Well, so what?
after we've experienced the Labour budget, which I think will attack
this is nonsense.
inherited wealth, the only people who will be entirely untouched by New Reality Britain will be the royal
does that have
family.
to do with what
Because
Meghan and Harry did?
Because you have accused them of trying to make money
Because
and Kate not trying to make money.
Because-
Kate doesn't need
let
to
me
make
just
money.
say something.
Tom.
Because they said when they left England that they wanted nothing to do with the royal family.
Correct.
They said that they were going to look for their privacy and look for a completely solitary life in California.
Right.
And then all they've done since reaching California is attach themselves to the royal family with their phony tours.
Well, they've done
Nigeria and
two
Colombia.
things. They've attached themselves to the royals as much as they can to profit from being royals, whilst at the same time relentlessly attacking the members of the royal family and the monarchy.
You've just
Paula.
but you've just accused them of leeching onto the royal family, and then in the same breath, 2 seconds ago, you said, and he didn't even go to Balmoral to see his father.
I remember
That's not
Harry's
contradictory.
leaving.
That's not contradictory at all.
I remember
That
Harry-
is not a contradiction.
I remember Harry's
It is
leaving
not.
very different from yours.
Either he cares about his father or he doesn't.
Yeah.
And the whole point about this.
So what
last-
about his father saying that he didn't have time in his diary to see him?
Well, because the whole thing was contrived by Harry. He wasn't going to be a puppet.
You know why, Paula?
to Harry's
No, I'm
nonsense.
told on very good authority, I won't say who told me this, that there are the vast majority now of the royal family, almost all of them, almost without exception, don't want to have anything to do with what Meghan and Harry because they don't trust them not to repeat
said
what
this
they tell them.
forever.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Let's
telling you
start
as a
record.
fact.
Let's go back to the question, which was about Harry and Meghan being able to earn money. My memory of Harry leaving is very different from yours, Tom. My memory of Harry and Meghan leaving was that Harry had asked if he could do certain things and stay as a member of the royal family. And I understand that he was not able to stay as a member of the royal
Queen
family
said,
and
"You
do
can't be half in,
those
half
things.
out."
You're not unique
so
to you. Everyone knows
he
that.
had to leave.
He didn't have to
So,
leave.
yes,
he did
because
not have to leave.
He could have stayed and done his duty.
He could have stayed and done his duty.
He didn't.
Which is, by the way,
feel
what
that
goes with the
Meghan-
royal
So
titles.
that he didn't feel that Meghan was safe. So he had to
know
leave.
that's nonsense.
And when he made the decision to leave, and Tom, with respect, I allowed you to speak, and you're now
She was literally in downtown Bogota last month.
I'll wait for you to finish.
Not safe to come to the UK, but fine to go to Colombia.
I'll wait for you to finish.
Do me a favour.
Well, I didn't see the paparazzi hounding her in Colombia or in Nigeria.
Where do you think the pictures
She also
came
went
from?
to Nigeria. Are you mocking Colombia and Nigeria?
Tell me what I'm mocking. The fact that they think they're entitled to do rival royal tours, which only promote them when they do zero royal duty
My understanding
for the
was
monarchy
Nigeria was about Invictus.
on behalf of this country. Nothing.
And that's why
it's
they were
all for
invited
themselves.
to
It's
go.
all for themselves.
But coming back to the money point, because I think this is really important, because you hear this all the time. So he left his family, as many people do in difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
They make the decision to leave their family.
No problem.
What do you expect him to do to
Not
earn
trade on-
money?
Not trade off the
royal
institution
family.
he trashes.
Money.
Yes.
He's
Not trade off the
on the
institution
contrary.
he trashes.
On the
They
contrary,
damage the
he's
monarchy.
talking-
Every time they do something, they damage the monarchy. And yet they want to, at the same
So
time,
you give him
trade
the
off
power,
the royal titles.
You're giving him the power to say that he
I would
has
take away
damaged
their power. I would
No.
remove their titles.
No, if you
If
allow
I
me
was
to
King
finish,
Charles, take the titles away. Try your luck as Harry and Meghan, regular Joes.
what is
But the Duke and
damage-
Duchess of Sussex,
what is
members of the royal
damage
family?
that you are
No.
saying that he has done to the
Lied
royal
and
family?
lied and lied from Oprah Winfrey
No,
onwards.
I'm not saying
For
what you're
massive
saying he
personal gain.
did. I'm saying what is the damage? Because you have to
Because
accept...
they lie about the royal family.
No, the damage. Let's focus on that word, because you accept
Let me give
that
you an
they are
example.
not popular
Let me give you an
with the
example.
younger
Let me
population.
give you an example.
I would like to explain
What
what
about
the damage.
calling them a bunch of callous racists without any evidence?
The
Right,
damage
where
they've
is the
done,
damage?
Paula,
What
the
is the
damage
damage?
they've
What about
done,
through the Commonwealth, the damage for calling them racist?
the damage. Can I explain what I perceive to be Piers and Tom
The
from a
issue
different
about
generation?
colonialism goes far further than Harry and Meghan.
But they
Piers,
said
and
it
you know
wasn't
that.
true.
Where is the
Far
evidence
further
for the
than that.
racism? There isn't any.
These two old crusties, what they love more than anything in
Old
the world
crusties, wow.
is the monarchy.
Surprised you
And
didn't call us
Harry
white
and Meghan
crusties.
turned their backs on the monarchy, the Britain's beloved monarchy, and that has wounded dinosaurs
Tessa.
like Piers and Tom.
Tessa.
They're not allowed freedom of choice.
Tessa.
That is the truth,
Tessa.
Paula. They're not allowed to
If
make
only
it.
they-
You want them to be like Sophie and Edward.
Tessa.
You know, they couldn't make it in the media world, so they became the
Actually,
beautiful
hugely
Duke and
admiring of
Duchess.
Sophie and Edward's
I know,
work
I know,
ethic.
and
Work
I am
ethic
too. And I'm too.
on
but-
behalf of the country,
But why
yes.
should Harry and Meghan have to be like them?
Because they didn't leave the monarchy.
And they lied
If they
to
had
Oprah
left the
Winfrey.
monarchy and given up their titles and gone and been celebrities in California, no problem.
You
right?
want
It's the fact
Harry
they want to
and
have their
Meghan
royal
to go-
cake and eat it.
You want them
they
to-
want to be royals
No.
while dumping on the royals.
They are
and
royals.
Dumping
It's not
on
that
the
they
monarchy.
want to be. Let's be clear. They are royals, and what you want them to do is to scurry and hide underneath
I
the
want
rock.
them to stop lying.
They
I
are
want
not
them to
going to
stop
do
lying and
that.
stop
Stop
trashing
lying.
the royal family.
But they haven't lied recently. All they've
Recently?
done is
Oh my God!
No, let's be
Oh
clear.
my God!
Let's be
And by the
clear.
way, what about this priceless nugget to end on? People magazine, which is one of the most gossipy magazines in the world, America's #1 gossip magazine, today did a post on X, in which they said that Prince Harry had emailed them his personal thoughts about his 40th birthday. Which
that your source,
on
the
Sunday.
People magazine?
Here's my thoughts. Prince Privacy, the guy who sues every publication he can think of for invading his privacy, is now emailing America's #1 gossip magazine to give them all the inside lowdown on his
That's your
40th
source.
birthday. You
Yes,
literally
Twitter.
couldn't make it up.
We're talking
Couldn't make it up.
about misleading here, Piers. Come on.
Yeah,
he was
we are.
asked a question and he responded to the
He
question.
personally emailed People magazine.
Okay, so how was he going
It's
to
like me
respond?
saying, I really want my privacy. By the way, I'm just emailing the National Enquirer to let them know what I'm doing for my birthday. Do me a favour!
He hasn't stopped.
All right, we got to
Why
leave
are
it.
you so
We've got to leave it there. But lovely
Angry.
to see you all. I'm not
Angry.
angry. You know what I'm angry
You're
about?
angry. You're
I'm
angry.
angry.
man.
I'm angry that even
And
though the
cynical.
polls show how unpopular they are because of the way they behave, you two are the last two standing.
No, we're not.
Done
Still
a good,
defending
you have
the
done a
indefensible.
good
You dragged
job.
the Sussexes
You
onto the
have done a
table and
good
talked
job.
about them. We could have
You've
stuck
done a
with
good
Kate.
Kate's cancer video. I know what we'll do. We'll stick out our promo for our polo series. Wow. Okay. Thank you all very much. Great to see you all, especially after the long, boring summer without you. Thank you very much.
way, shape, or form and stir the pot.
Well, let's take a look at some of this podcast, because honestly, just when I thought it couldn't get any more ridiculous, there's a clip where she emails her young kids every night, even though they're there. Let's take a look.
And so I'd created for the kids these email addresses that sort of like names, again, that you would never guess, that I will give them at some point in their lives when they're older. But before I go to bed almost every night, I email them.
Wow.
I email because it doesn't have to be a heavy lift. And you email them like, here's your report card from today. Or, oh my gosh, you said the funniest thing this morning. Or here's a picture of you two having breakfast. Or here's you playing with the dog. The things that you're not going to frame, the things that you're not going to put pen to paper in a journal, but they will end up at one point in their life, maybe when they're 16 or when they're 18, that I say, here's an email that I've been keeping for you.
Because that's really what you want when you're 18. 40,000 emails, Maureen, from your mother about every time you burped in public. You know what's really interesting about that clip? That's not actually her podcast. It's her appearing for the first time on another podcast, barefoot, no makeup, you know, the usual weird, manipulative kind of thing. You're trying to send some message about it. I knew her a bit before she met Harry. She was nothing like that. She didn't speak like that. Her mannerisms weren't like that. This is all fake, right? She was a real hard-nosed LA girl, right, who was on the fast track. Yeah. Now she's like this, oh, I'm soft, I'm mummy, I'm this. It's all bullshit. If you're struggling with sleepless nights and exhausting days, you might want to try Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who value hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients to improve your sleep, so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, apigenin, L-theanine, melatonin, and magnesium. It's designed to help you fall asleep and just stay asleep. We've teamed up to give you a massive discount of up to 40% for a limited time. So go to shopbeam.com/Piers, P-I-E-R-S, and use promo code Piers at the checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Piers. Use promo code Piers for up to 40% off. Sleep better, wake up stronger, and show up ready for your family, your work, and your country too.
Now she's this beatified saint. I'm guessing when you knew her, our impression of her was she was a striver on the hustle and she was on the prowl.
Actually, perfectly likable. This is the weird thing. I said it at the time. Perfectly likable and perfectly. But no, there's no doubt the way she then ruthlessly cut everybody out of her life the moment she met him showed a very different side. That then you heard all the stories about the first marriage and what was going on there and how she cut everybody out. Then you realise she cut all her family out. And then Oprah and George Clooney are sitting where her dad should have been at the wedding and so on. And the whole thing unravelled very quickly. And interestingly, Maureen, I'll just play this clip to get your comment on this too. This is where she talks about what happened when she came into the royal family. Let's take a listen.
I mean, you have to imagine at the beginning, everyone has like butterflies and then we immediately went into the trenches together.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, like 6 months into dating. So now 7 years later, when you have a little bit of breathing space, you can just enjoy each other in a new way. And that's why I feel like it's more of a honeymoon period for us now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll be married forever?
Yes.
I have a letter.
He's also a fox, if you haven't noticed. My husband's very, very handsome. But his heart is even more beautiful.
Oh, my God, pass the sick bucket. What's fascinating, Maureen, is that despite all this idyllic world they now live in, he looks permanently, unbelievably miserable. So one of them isn't telling us the truth.
And Piers, if I may slice and dice for a quick second. Okay, we're not wearing makeup. We are wearing makeup. You can see the blush. You can see the foundation. We're not applying our bronzer with a trowel. Number one. Number two, emails to the children. She tells us what wasn't shown in that clip. She finishes that thought by saying, these emails are so that when my children are of age, they can come to me and say, oh my God, you loved us so much. It's me, me, me. She was in the trenches with Harry. Excuse me. She wangled her way onto the cover of Vanity Fair. Graydon Carter, EIC at the time, said when he was approached, he said, "Who the F is this woman? Oh, she's going to get engaged to Prince Harry. Well, let's give her the cover." Okay, who arranged that? They got a $40 million wedding, cheered by the British taxpayers who footed that bill. She's going to stay married to him forever, says the woman who was reportedly shopping a post-divorce memoir within the past 6 months and who we saw on video in New York City 2 weeks ago, entering a Time 100 summit where she had zero business speaking, swat his hand away as he went to take it. So yes, this is the love story of all time, Piers, of course.
Katie, it is hard not to be so cynical. It is. I'm with Maureen on this. Everything they do seems so manipulative, calculated, PR motivated, money motivated, and the antithesis of what it means to actually be a dutiful working royal.
Well, you used that word splintered earlier, Piers, and I think that's the point. You've got this sort of rival court in Montecito, and I think we almost have to stop. Maybe it is a case of, you know, the whole question over their titles, but almost stop treating them as a royal couple because they're not. They are a celebrity couple.
Shouldn't Charles just take the titles away? I saw Ian Wilson write that at the weekend.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And I thought significant that he finally did that because he loves
I think the fact that she's using that HRH title, even privately, is problematic for the palace. I think that's something they will be watching very, very closely because it was the express wish of the late Queen.
Yes.
She wasn't going to strip them of it, but they weren't to use them. And of course, even in a private capacity, it's like, well, it's out there now. So should we just put it on the Netflix contract?
Yeah, and what we haven't seen, Paula, is any more details of the phenomenal sales of the As Ever range. Because I suspect what happened was they had about 3 pots of jam that sold out because they bought them all.
Strawberry sauce.
And ever since, there hasn't been actually any update on the extraordinary sales. And I suspect it's just tanking like everything else they do. Why would you buy Meghan Markle jam?
Sauce. And that makes you happy. I mean, you actually sit there and you look gleeful.
It does, yeah.
And that is...
It does, you know why?
And that's really
I am
shame.
No, because I don't
we were talking about humanity.
No, I don't want them...
We were talking about humanity.
I don't want them making money out of being royals.
You don't want them
while they're
making
simultaneously trashing the royals and damaging the monkey.
You want to see that woman in the gutter.
No, actually, I don't really care about her so much. I don't care about her so much. Look, she's gone back to California. She's got what she wanted. She took her prince and she's milking him dry. I don't care. Listen, it's not that surprising. Wallace Simpson did it to Edward, right? It's fine. And Brooklyn Beckham's wife's doing it to him now from the Beckhams. It's fine.
All these terrible women.
All these
terrible American
well, I did point out,
women.
Yeah.
We are still talking
we
about
We had two fine examples of magnificent American women staring down the barrel of the camera. So I exclude. This is not a general view, but that's 3 out of 3.
Because
but let me ask you, Paula. Look, we can talk around the houses about all this. You go to such painstaking efforts to try and find an excuse for this stuff. Surely in your quiet moments, when you're on your own and you're watching and reading this crap, you're just like, why don't the pair of you shut up? Just shut up.
Do you know what? It's not about an excuse. It's about objectivity. And I think that's really important because I don't know the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I don't know the Prince and Princess of Wales. But what I can see with my own eyes is an inordinate amount of negative press about them. They cannot breathe. Everything is negative, and that should worry everybody in terms of freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech?
In terms
what are you talking about?
In terms of uncensored, being uncensored.
Who's censoring them?
There must be a level of objectivity in terms of responding to what is an absolute
Who is censoring them, Paula?
Tsunami
Paula, I think you've
of negative
Paula,
information.
I say this with great respect. I think you've lost your marbles. What's it got to do
just
with...
today, Piers, just today.
Kinsey, it's about freedom...
Should they not be free to say what they want to say?
Yeah, because the one thing they've not been is free to say what they really think.
And when they do...
Paula!
When they do, they are absolutely pounced on. And they have the response that they're not allowed to speak, they're not allowed to work,
they're not
all the time. They're not allowed to travel, they're not allowed to do anything charitable. They are not allowed to do anything.
I think the point you're making is that they
never stop speaking
for doing right and vice versa.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely, Katie.
They have made such dangerous. They have made such damaging accusations towards the royal family. I think it's about holding them accountable. I think that people are simply fact-checking or saying, well, you're saying this today, but 2 years ago you said the complete opposite. I think it's important that we hold people accountable that are making such extreme accusations about the British royal family, because at the end of the day, it is detrimental to their brand. And if it's not true, how incredibly cruel.
I accept that fact-checking is utterly appropriate and important.
You don't know, because you believe in multiple truths.
I accept that. I don't.
You think everyone can have their own truth?
It's not my job to believe anyone's truth. It's only my job.
People don't have their own truths.
It's only my job to observe.
How can you talk about fact checking and then say everyone's got their own truth?
It's only my job to observe objective facts, and so I absolutely agree with you.
Do you believe in the truth?
It is about fact checking, but I very rarely see, in terms of responses, in terms of opinions, in terms of reporting, objective fact checking. I very rarely see.
Paula, can I ask you something about the latest Vanity Fair cover story? Because
which I haven't seen.
Well, that was the final nail in the coffin. And Kinsey, I think you will agree with me on this. That was the sort of the last bastion, the last champion that Harry and Meghan had in Vanity Fair. And when they turned on them, that was objective. There was no agenda from the editor of Vanity Fair to portray Meghan in the negative light and Harry that they came out in. That deep dive into Montecito, Netflix, and everything else came out with a very unflattering perspective of both of them.
I'm sorry. Also, Paula, with great respect, if someone talks like a dickhead and walks like a dickhead and acts like a dickhead, he's a dickhead. And it's not my truth,
I mean, you said it,
or
Piers.
his truth,
you said
or anybody
Piers.
else's truth, and it requires no fact-checking. He is a monumental dickhead. And that's what we're now seeing unravelling before our eyes. And he can't stop talking. The idea that their free speech is being infringed in some way, they never stop talking. This is the problem.
Okay, Piers, let's say you're right. Let's say that we can't stop them talking. How dangerous is that for the monarchy?
Very.
Is my point.
Very.
I mean, that is fundamentally my point.
There was a survey in the Caribbean, a lot of the Commonwealth countries, particularly Caribbean, which showed a marked drop in the popularity of the royal family.
And across the Commonwealth.
Because of the racism allegations.
Yeah.
Okay?
And
they, by the way, now apparently we're supposed to believe they never made them. Yeah. So you let the fire off, you're the arsonist, and then you run away and pretend it was actually the media that set the fire off. Bullshit.
And so my point is, do I think that this approach, this attack, is going to work out right?
By who?
We know that anger never resolves a problem.
All right.
We know that. So what are we going to do in terms of those people who support the royal family?
I know the answer. You take all their titles away and you say you can swing for it and you can be...
And Prince Andrew, what do we do with his title?
Well, he doesn't do anything, Andrew, does he? He doesn't do anything. He has nothing.
He went to Easter worship.
Andrew literally sits in his house most of the time and he goes out and rides. That's it. Right? What he doesn't do is give endless interviews attacking the royal family or the monarchy. He has his own crosses to bear, quite rightly, and that's what it is. But he is effectively estranged from any public life whatsoever. Whatsoever. These two never stop going on global media to trash the royal family and the monarchy, and each time they do it, they chip away at the mystique and the magic and the popularity, and that's why I despise them for what they're doing. And the king should step in, and he should say, enough,
Piers.
the titles are all being taken away, you can now live the life you wanted, which is out on your own, free of royal
In terms of tourist
shackles.
attractions, Windsor Castle is 23rd in the list. Buckingham Palace is 58th in the list. Are we going to blame Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex for that? No.
What's that got to do with
Well,
it?
the reality is...
All right, we've got to leave it there.
That's the reality.
Got to leave it there. Thank you to my guests here. Thank you to my... any last thoughts, Maureen?
The First Amendment that Harry, when he alighted in the United States to live, said it made no sense to him that Americans have a First Amendment right to free speech, which he then has cloaked himself in to level any number of baseless accusations of racism as any primary member of his family lay dying, okay? King of hypocrisy.
Thank you very much. Kinsey, Maureen, Katie, lovely to see you. Paula, always lovely to see you, defending the indefensible with such eloquence. Thank you all very much. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without. Issues are dominating the global news agenda. What happens next in each of them will have a profound impact on the state of the world. First, of course, is the forthcoming US presidential election. The second is the crisis now engulfing the Middle East. My next guest has strident views on both these big stories. He's not shy about airing them. Joining me in the studio is editor and CEO of Zeteo News, Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi, how are you?
Good to see you,
We
Piers.
have never met in person.
No.
Until now.
No, Twitter makes you think we have.
It was great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Great
Good
to
be
meet
in London.
you. Always enjoy our debates, which they are. Let's start with what's happening in Lebanon, because we may find some areas of agreement here, I suspect. But first of all, Hezbollah. Do you see a distinction between Hezbollah and, say, Hamas?
In what sense?
In what they are, what they represent, how they have acted?
I mean, they're very different groups. They operate in different places, in different contexts. I guess what they have in common is that they both came out of Israel's occupation of their land, right? Hamas comes out of the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, and many people are not aware of the fact that Israel occupied Lebanon, southern Lebanon, for 18 years, from 1982 to 2000 when they withdrew, although the Lebanese argue that there's still an occupation of a piece of Lebanese land called the Sheba Farms. So in that sense, they're similar. They're obviously different in some of their tactics. They're different religions. Well, they're different sects, I apologize, not different. They're both Muslim, but one is Shia, one is Sunni. They're both backed by Iran. I mean, look, there's similarities, differences. I think what's really interesting this time round is we've seen for a year Israel killing thousands of civilians in Gaza and saying, well, Hamas is to blame because of human shields, because of tunnels. That argument just does not work in Lebanon. They've killed 550 people, Piers, on Monday. An insane amount of people in a single day, one of the highest single-day death tolls in modern warfare. Almost all of them civilians, according to the Lebanese health ministry, which is not Hezbollah, by the way. You know, they always say Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza. So I think what we've seen is so phenomenally bad on Israel's end and so little defense. You know, October 7th was used, as you and I have discussed before, as the excuse for killing tens of thousands of Palestinians.
Well, I would categorise it differently. I don't think they used it as an excuse to go and kill tens of thousands of Palestinians. They responded to one of the most egregious terror attacks of modern times.
But when does the response end? We're nearly a year in.
Well, that's the question. That is the question.
Well, that's when it becomes an excuse. When you carry on killing and killing.
Is it an excuse, or is it that they are wedded to the elimination of Hamas because Hamas has persistently said, we want to keep doing the same thing over and over again? And there's a correlation with Hezbollah, whose charter is very explicit. They stand for the eradication of Israel. I mean, that's what they're about.
That doesn't justify killing 500 people in a single day, does it?
I didn't say it did, but
that's what bothers me. That's what happened this week. That's the big story. Hezbollah's charter is irrelevant to what we're talking about. That's not why they killed 500 people on Monday, Piers. I mean, Hezbollah's charter's been around for years.
I don't think it's irrelevant that you have a terror group on your doorstep who are wedded to your extinction. Why is that irrelevant?
I think the language you use is loaded, Piers. You say on your doorstep. Do you know they did a poll of Americans a while back who thought that Palestinians were occupying Israel? When we talk about this stuff, we make it sound like Israel is the one being occupied, besieged. Israel's the one that's occupying the West Bank, Gaza, longest military occupation in the world, going back to 1967. Israel is the country that occupied southern Lebanon. I mean, everything, the world did not begin on October the 7th. 1978, Israel invades southern Lebanon. 1982, Israel invades southern Lebanon. Sabra and Shatila massacre. 2006, Second Lebanon War, murder 100 people.
But you always make it sound like they're just doing this for the sake of it. They're not.
What are they doing it for?
Well, they've been provoked by Hezbollah.
Hezbollah didn't exist in 1917, Piers.
OK, I'm talking about the specifics of going on now. The provocation since October the 7th. Hezbollah's first response to October the 7th was to unleash rockets on Israel.
That's not true.
On October the 8th.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is what happened.
Where did they fire the first rocket?
They fired rockets on the 8th.
Where?
Well, you tell me.
No, you just said they fired at Israel. Where?
Well, they fired in the direction of Israel.
Where did they hit? They fired at the Sheba Farms.
The answer, tell me.
I do. They fired at the Sheba Farms, which, as I said earlier, is an area of Syria. Well, the Lebanese claim it's Lebanon. Syria claims it's Lebanon. Israel says no and is occupying the Sheba Farms. They fired at Israeli military installations in the Sheba Farms. Now, have they got fired in Israel?
So
since?
They were firing at Israel. They were firing
at
an area that Israel says is theirs.
No, Israel doesn't say that. Israel says it's Syria's. Because remember, Piers, Israel is occupying Syria and the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon, would argue, parts of Lebanon. This is the problem, right? The core of the problem is Israel's territorial expansionism.
It's a mess.
Attacks, not a mess. It's Israel occupying multiple Arab lands, which leads to quote-unquote resistance or quote-unquote terrorism, whichever word. I don't care what word you want to use right now. But that is the core, right? You had John Mearsheimer on the show this week, made the same point. Deal with the occupation, then you deal with the violence. And look, has Hezbollah fired into Israel at civilian targets? Yes, I don't agree with that. But the reality is 82% of the exchange of fire between Lebanon and Israel since October the 7th has been done by Israel.
Okay.
82%.
But here's
is that not a provocation of
Let
Hezbollah?
me finish my point, which is that since October the 8th, 19,000 missiles, rockets have come from Hezbollah to Israel, right?
But way more from Israel into Lebanon.
Well, I'm sure,
82%.
Of course they've responded. What else are they supposed to do?
82%.
But
this is not two equal sides.
So they can't defend themselves.
But the vast majority of attacks is on Lebanon.
Okay, but would you condemn the firing of rockets by Hezbollah or not?
Of course, I condemn all attacks on civilian targets.
Well,
you know that, Piers. We've discussed this.
I'm going to come to Israel's response.
I don't come on shows to defend militant groups or foreign governments.
Okay.
I come on shows to say, let's end the violence.
Yeah.
Let's sort out what the solution is.
Yeah.
Let's look at the root cause of the violence. It is undeniable that the root cause of the violence is Israel, Israel's occupation, the genocide in Gaza. What did the leader of Hezbollah say? He said, we won't fire any rockets if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the president of Iran say? We won't retaliate for what you did to Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the Houthis say? We'll stop blocking ships if you end the killing in Gaza. Where do all roads lead back to?
Why would you believe any of those people?
I don't believe any of them. I'm Ronald Reagan.
You're citing them as if they're sort of gospel statements from people who have unimpeachable.
I'll tell you why, if you let me finish. I'm Ronald Reagan.
A bunch of terrorists said, we won't do X, Y, Z if you do this.
I'm Ronald Reagan. I say verify. Call their bluff. If they're lying, call their bluff. Stop the Gaza fighting and then see what happens.
Yeah, but Israel has called Hamas's bluff.
When?
There was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
It's fundamentally false. They were attacking Palestinians the week before October the 7th.
There was...
In September, you can Google it on that tablet. What's your definition of a ceasefire?
Well,
Israel gets to attack people and not the other way around.
Okay.
In September, hold on. In September, you just made a charge that's not true. There's a tablet there. You can Google it. Guardian headline, right there. You can go see the news report.
I don't Google during interviews.
Well, afterwards, everyone can. There's a Guardian headline, September 2023, a month before October the 7th. The headline is Palestinians shot in the ankles by Israel in Gaza, attacked. There were airstrikes in Gaza. And by the way, Gaza is not isolated. Gaza and the West Bank under international law are one entity. There were several hundred Palestinians killed in the West Bank before October.
But my point to you, Mehdi, is...
So there was no ceasefire. You just can't say... It's just not true.
They would say there was a ceasefire.
And it's not true.
We'd say otherwise.
The facts say otherwise, Piers.
But what I've noticed with you is you always downplay anything which might be deemed by Israel to be provocation.
No.
You're always...
Not at all. Did I downplay October 7th? I don't think I have on your show or anywhere else.
No, but,
it's a horrible crime.
But what you do, in your debating style, and it's an impressive debating style, but you always pivot back to, yeah, but the real problem's Israel. Yeah, but the real problem's Israel.
Hold on. If we're going to talk about styles, Piers, you're famous for interview style that begins with condemn this group, that group, that group. On Monday, 500... Hold on. Let me finish my point, then you come back in. 500 people were killed on Monday. 100 women, 50 children. I assume you condemn that and don't support the killing of civilians in Lebanon, right? 500 people died. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Americans or 6,000 Brits in a day.
Sure.
And yet we started this interview with Hezbollah Charter. So if you're going to talk about styles, you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Okay.
I'm going to focus on 500 people dead.
Let me come back to the week before, where 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were targeted specifically...
How do you know that?
What do you mean? How do I know that?
You just said 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were
How
targeted.
many was it?
I don't know. I'm asking you. You made the claim. How
that
do you
is
know
what's
3,000?
been reported.
By
Do
who?
you dispute that?
Yeah, I dispute everything Israel
But
says.
you
They
don't
lied
know the
for
real
a year,
number.
Piers.
You don't know the real number.
But I didn't give a number. You did.
Well, what has been the number from the other side?
I didn't give a number. You said 3,000 terrorists. I'm wondering why a journalist...
That is what's been reported.
No, it's not reported. It's what's said by Israel. Or it's what's said by people speaking on behalf of Israel.
So
was a little girl who died?
Hang on. Israel hasn't even said it did it.
They have in private. It's been reported widely to go... No, to the American government.
Okay, but don't say they said it publicly. They haven't.
But...
Obviously, I believe they did it, right? But
I believe they did it
too.
But
you're saying they said this in public.
You just gave a 3,000 number, and I'm wondering... I just saw a little girl's funeral last week. Was she a Hezbollah terrorist, in your view?
No.
So then why did you say 3,000 terrorists? There was a kid killed.
I was about to say that in the process of targeting very specifically, in an extraordinarily whichever way you look at it...
In a terror attack?
Well, that's what I'm going to come to. So they target 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists with their pagers, walkie-talkies and so on. In the process, a small, comparative to that number, a small number of civilians get killed, which is obviously deplorable. But my point to you is, if someone's been chucking rockets over for a year at you and your people, you've had to displace 60,000 people from the north of your country because of his relentless bombardment, and you eventually respond in such a precise, targeted fashion, right? And in the process, some civilians are killed, which is never acceptable, can never be condoned, never be supported. But if it is right, as has been widely reported by all mainstream media, that 3,000 terrorists
people associated with Hezbollah. Not everybody in Hezbollah is a terrorist.
Okay. But
like a driver, a nurse.
3,000 members of Hezbollah were targeted, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that that is, some people have claimed is unlawful?
Yep.
You've said it's a terror attack, you think it was illegal.
Yep.
But I would say that's not. I mean, I would say that if you look at that in totality, they are responding to rocket attacks all year, and they are being extremely precise, unlike what they've been doing in Gaza, where I do not accept that Israel has been doing this precision targeting they keep talking about, and I've held them to account for that. I do think in this particular occasion, they were extremely precise, and it was a brilliant piece of warfare, right, if you want to call it that. Notwithstanding, I don't like any war, nor do you. But my point is, surely that is justified. I mean, in some parts of this, you have to say Israel's entitled to defend itself.
So, actually, Lebanon is the one that needs to defend itself, as we say, 500 people killed on a day. Look, you are right. You have held. I've watched your interviews with Israeli spokespersons. You have held them to account on their nonsense about casualty numbers. But let me just say 3 very brief things on that. Number one, you said just a moment ago, when they eventually respond, you use that phrase eventually. That's just factually inaccurate. We already discussed.
No, you talked about
82% of the attacks. They have been bombing Lebanon for a year. Now, you can say who started it, whatever. I'm not talking about. But they've been attacking Lebanon.
But this is a significant escalation.
Yes, but 5 days after October the 7th, or 6 days after, they killed a Reuters video journalist in southern Lebanon, a man called Issam Abdullah, killed, according to Reporters Without Borders, targeted by Israel. According to the UN, a war crime, right? So they have been killing people in Lebanon who have nothing to do with Hezbollah for a year now. So let's not say eventually. Number two, I would say, yes, it's an act of terror. And that's just not my view. You know Leon Panetta, former Obama defense secretary, former head of the CIA. When the former head of the CIA comes out and says Israel is committing an act of terror, I think we should take that seriously. But it's not just him. A group of UN special rapporteurs on human rights and extrajudicial killings put out a statement.
But many other people have said it was not an act of terror.
Of course, and that's the problem with international law. People can argue it always. You know that you and I are not lawyers, but we know that lawyers can argue multiple things.
But do you not think that action was justified?
No, of course not. I don't think you should booby-trap devices. It's against international law to use booby traps. I think I'm actually petrified, separate to the politics of the Middle East, Piers. I'm actually petrified at the ability of governments to use technology and surveillance to track us and now kill us. I think there's a wider discussion to be had. I think the idea that Israel keeps opening the doors to all sorts of new precedents that other governments will run with and we will regret. I think, going into the supply chain of devices, phones, beepers, whatever, pagers, I think that's very, very worrying. I also think from a practical point of view, it's not targeted. If you blow up a guy with a pager, even if you think he's a terrorist or a terrorist leader, you don't know if he's driving, he's at an intersection, he's about to crash his car into children crossing the road. We saw them going off in grocery stores. It's taken out people's eyes, fingers. No, I don't think it's targeted. I think it's barbaric. I think it's illegal. And I also think, look, I say this all the time, even if I was an Israeli, I would not support this. It doesn't make Israel safer. Do you think Israel's safer today?
Would you support then any military...
They just fired a rocket at Tel Aviv.
Let me ask you, would you then, by your criteria, is there any military response that Israel can give, first to what Hamas did on October the 7th, the second to what Hezbollah has been doing ever since? Is there any military response Israel can do which, in your eyes, would be justified?
Well, I don't accept the loaded question. You say response. Israel is the aggressor in all of these places. As I say,
they are illegally... the aggressor on October the 7th, was it?
Well, it was actually, because it was occupying Gaza and it was besieging Gaza for 20 years, and even in Israeli general...
You're sounding like you think it was justified what Hamas did.
No.
It's one or the other.
Why? How is it justified?
So it wasn't justified?
Of course not. I've said that many times.
So was Israel not entitled to respond?
No, but I'm questioning you use the word response. Response implies everything starts on October 7th.
No,
I don't accept your timeline.
I've never said that.
Well, you keep saying response.
To that specific terror attack, in a way that if in England somebody suddenly launched an attack on our people and they killed 1,200 and wounded nearly 7,000, I would absolutely expect my government to respond with substantial force. Would you?
Yes, but Britain...
So you would?
Hold on. But is Britain occupying territory in that scenario? Because that's the key point here. It's Shlomo Brom...
It's dangerous wording.
No, it's not dangerous, because I'm
making it sound like... I don't disagree with you.
I'm going to quote... If you let me finish, before you keep suggesting I'm supporting October 7th, which I have not...
Sounds like you're justifying it to me.
Well,
You're saying,
you're not
they're
paying
being
attention.
occupied.
Well,
They're being occupied.
They are occupied, and they're not occupied.
I think they probably are, yeah.
Not probably. The ICJ says they're occupied. Yeah. Shlomo Brom, who's one of the former top Israeli generals, one of their big strategists, said after October the 7th, what did you expect if you keep people under military occupation?
Is that what you think?
They will rise up. Yeah, of course. There's always going to be terrorism.
What do you expect?
Yeah, there's always going to be terrorism and violence as long as you oppress people.
On that scale, you expected that?
No, obviously, I don't expect the details, but do you expect Palestinians to fight back? Of course you do. Everyone who's sane, who looks at this conflict from American presidents downwards would say the root cause of the violence has to be ending the conflict.
I agree.
So then, talking about tit-for-tat responses
but I also think if you go back
sense.
If you go back to the start in 1948, which I've had many scholars on from both sides of this, probably the most interesting piece I read about this was Jonathan Friedland of The Guardian, who's a Jewish journalist, who concluded, you can construct, if you're reasonably fair-minded about all this, you can construct a solid argument for both sides to feel aggrieved from the very start of this conflict.
Fair enough. And that's, that's a different argument. I'm talking about what you talk about now.
My point is, when people say it didn't start October the 7th...
Well, I'm not even going back to 1948. I'm talking about 20 years of Gaza under blockade.
I know.
Piers. Yeah, open-air prison camp, to quote David Cameron, that well-known pro-Palestinian lefty.
But also Hamas, in that process since 2005, have clearly run Gaza in a despicable manner.
Yeah, agreed.
You wouldn't disagree?
No.
So it's not all Israel's fault, is it?
Well, no, because you're mixing different things up. Is Hamas...
You're always very keen to put it all on Israel.
No, because if we're talking about...
I try and be a little bit more like, hang on. When you commit a terror attack on the scale of October 7th...
You both sides occupation and illegal...
No, I don't.
Yeah, you are. You just said,
I don't.
I try and be fair. You can't be fair to an occupier. By the way, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, this is what frustrates me. And I know my friend Owen Jones sat here and said the same thing to you. When we talk about Russia, Ukraine, you don't do both sides. You blame Russia as the invader and occupier. You don't do that with Israel. That is the double standard on your part.
No,
I try and be consistent, Piers.
No.
I'm morally consistent.
No, because
I say Russia... Hold on, let me finish the sentence. Russia illegally invaded and occupied Israel and illegally annexed to Crimea. And Israel is doing the same thing in the West Bank, Gaza, the Golan Heights.
As you know, they are completely different.
Yeah, Israel's worse. It's been going on much longer. Well, people living under much worse conditions.
But
they've killed more kids.
Well, there is no similarity in these two situations.
Agreed. Israel's is worse.
It's not.
How many kids have been killed in Ukraine versus Gaza?
Well, in 1 year.
Ever.
In 1 year?
Ever. Take whatever point you want. More kids have been killed in Gaza than in Ukraine.
Okay.
Every human rights group agrees with that.
What's happened in Ukraine? We can come to Ukraine. What happened in Ukraine is a Russian dictator invaded illegally.
We agree on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But we don't agree on Israel because you're not consistent.
I think Israel is much more complicated.
That's complicated, as my friend Ta-Nehisi Coates pointed out the other way, is just a good way of avoiding attributing moral responsibility. It's complicated. No, it's not complicated, actually. Israel is the occupier under international law. Israel is the one killing the vast majority of civilians. Right now, it's not a liberal democracy. It's run by neo-fascists now.
Well, I don't disagree with you. There are some right-wing headbangers on that cabinet. I also think that Netanyahu has to go. I also think the whole of Hamas have to go, right?
Under no scenario is it liberal democracy right now. Palestinians do not have the same rights.
But let me come back to my point about Hezbollah, because that's the most current part of this crisis over there. We'll cover all this. We've got plenty of time. With Hezbollah, my point to you would simply be that if someone does what Hezbollah did on October the 8th, has carried on doing it all year, they have a charter which says they want to eradicate Israel, you have to defend yourself. So the question then becomes, what type of defence